Hello and welcome inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 853. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Let me try this in English. Oh, I've been in Belgium for a week. I almost said that in West Flemish. This is Todd, AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
Yep, that's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to talk about Formula One news because that's what we do on off-race weekends. But before doing that, I have to introduce my co-host, which means I have to go all the way to the right coast of America. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to get into Grace's head, okay? We're going to find out. I don't want to think she's in an abusive relationship. We're going to find out what happened with Grace and the Hornets, all right? So you know her, you love her, the lovely, the redoubtable Grace! Grace, how you doing?
I'd like to believe it was the Charlotte Hornets. It would make a better story.
Yeah, it would. Okay, Grace, so you can't come on the YouTube version, the video version of this podcast with a banged up head and not explain it. You're going to have to explain.
This is great. You know, when you have those great moments and you think, nobody will know. Wrong. It's now on YouTube forever.
Yeah.
I ran into my garage door that I put halfway. Because we had a hornets or wasp, I don't really know the difference, but it was building a little nest in the corner of the garage. And so I didn't want to let the hornets in the garage because that would be terrible, right? So I just put it halfway because I don't really want to kill the hornet. I just want them. It's like snakes. You be there, I be here, we're good, right? I don't have a problem with you as long as you stay there. So I didn't really want to mess with them, but I also don't want them to come into the garage because now I have a whole nother problem of how do I get these guys out of the garage, right? So, because I realized, please don't put in the comments, you could use Raid or a fire hose or something. I get it. I'm trying not to kill them, right? I just want to live and let live. And so I thought, well, I'll just put the garage door up only so high, and then they won't fly into the garage. Except that when I then bent down to fill the bird feeder and stood back up again, and I ran right into the garage door that I put that way. So lesson learned. They've left, so I guess I win, but I'm never doing that again. That was not great.
Well, let it be known that the heroic and brave portion of this story is Grace versus Hornets,
yes.
And at first it was Hornets 1, Grace 0. Yes. But if they left, I think it's pretty much Grace 1, Hornets 0.
I don't know. I mean, it was more, it's been so
Or did you
warm.
guys just achieve detente and you both just kind of went your own ways? You were like, okay, Hornets, I need to be nice and whatever. And the Hornets like, okay, that lady just ran into the garage door. She's crazy. Let's get out of here.
We're going to go. Maybe.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Could
but,
be.
There's only 2 or 3 of them. I don't usually see hornets nests. This is pretty late in the season, but it's been so warm this summer. So who knows what's going on there. But
yeah.
What do I know? I'm just glad that they're on their way, and I can now open the garage door all the way when I go to feed the birds in the morning.
Well, that's good news.
Isn't that all? That's what we all want, right?
Yes.
Rudy's the winner.
Open the garage door all the way. That's what we all want.
Lesson learned. Don't do that.
It is. I'm back, Grace.
This is great. This will also be good to know when my family members watch this, because then I'll get the text message, because of course I really didn't tell anybody this, but I'll find out.
See, parents are going to be worried. There's going to be questions,
No, I was just trying to keep to myself.
No, now the whole world knows.
Congratulations. That's great.
Oh, boy. It's been a long week, and I can't lie to you. Normally when I go to Europe, it's pretty tough with jet lag, And if anybody's got a better idea, see, I get on that plane at 7 p.m. on the East Coast. You take off, and I eat something that afternoon around 2 or 3, which would be dinner-ish time in Belgium, and then I don't eat on the flight. I just try to get on and go to sleep, and by the time you wake up, hopefully, if you slept, you're kind of landing, right? And so you try to jumpstart your system to get it on that, well, for me, they're plus 7 hours, so you try to get that, right? So normally that's fine, but I'm normally not over there for a full week, and this time I was. And so flying back, generally, I flew back on Saturday. So you get up and you go to the airport, you get on a plane, you land around 5 p.m., you get home around 5 p.m., you just stay up till regular bedtime and jump start right back into the normal thing, right? I don't know what the deal is this time. And maybe it was because my body got so acclimated to the plus 7 that it's a little harder to jump back in. So I'm going to try energy. I'm going to try energy for this podcast. So
well, we're going to do great. Well, it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Nobody will know. Nobody will know.
We have some very stimulating topics for this evening, too. I mean, nobody will.
Very scintillating. Yes, yes. Because I mean, who amongst us doesn't want to do tire talk?
I know, right? It's the most interesting thing going on right now.
It is. It's the most interesting thing in Formula One.
Next to the fact that I think we should officially petition the FIA to change the name of the Singapore race to the Felipe Massa Invitational. Like, I think we just have to lean right into this whole Felipe Massa business. Like,
I think so.
It was already great. It was already a great moment in Formula One history, and now it's just going to keep getting better.
And now it's getting better, So we're gonna update you on that one.
So that you're caught up to speed before we go to the Felipe Massa Invitational this weekend.
That's exactly right, Grace. You've got to be up to speed. So when you and 1,000 of your close personal friends are sitting there watching the race, you can speak with full command of the facts and know that the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix is the Felipe Massa Invitational, and you will be able to speak. Nay, you'll be able to wax poetic to all your DTS friends who may not have known all the details, but you will.
That's right.
We're done, right? Also going to cover a little Flexi-wing. Who doesn't love a little Flexi-wing, Flexi-floor, Flexi-whatever discussion? Oh, and also we're gonna dip our toe into the lukewarm waters of a crowded paddock. We're going to be talking about that as well. So, but up front, I do have to say, I've said it 1,000 times in videos, and I apologize for missing the Italian Grand Prix review last week. But you'll remember that Paul was in, his motherland in the UK, and I was in Belgium all week, and so we missed the opportunity to do that. We were very busy lads. And I did post a TPF story. Oh, it was interesting. To all of you folks that commented that you really liked the TPF stories, thanks so much. It means a lot. I did get a crap review from somebody who's like, what the hell is this? This is, where's the real podcast? I was like, dude. If you listened to the real podcast, you would have known that I wasn't.
You said it on the podcast. You did it on TikTok. You said it on, like every form of media that
I did
multiple times.
Right. Reaction time's a factor. Please pay attention. Anyway, so apologies. Thank you for hanging in there with us. And so we'll start back off with Grace and I today, and then we'll have Paul hopefully back from the UK, and we'll review the Felipe Massa Invitational. So
he did do his job at Goodwood, which was to get himself on some tires. So
he did some great tire sitting. You know how Grace and I love when drivers sit on tires.
It's the best part.
But if you're going to sit on a tire, Paul outdoes them all. He sits on a Lotus.
Yeah, I know.
A vintage Lotus is great.
His dapper dress up day, and on the dapperest dressed up car of them all. It was the greatest photo. So
he didn't like it when I said he looks almost like a bit of a dandy. He didn't like that.
No, sure not.
Yeah, he didn't.
I don't
know. But he and his wife look lovely in period dress.
It looked like fun.
They're such a cute couple, aren't they?
They are. I know, right?
He and his wife, they're cute. Yeah. So anyway, great time. So no, I had a great time at Belgium. I tried a bunch of Belgian beer that I can't get here in the States, but one of them I can get. I found out, but I really did like was a Westmalle. And it was really good. I had a Carmelite triple, which is good, but the Westmalle triple was really good. And there's one I can't pronounce. I think, for Americans to pronounce some West Flemish words, you'd have to remove your tongue. But it's Garre. I don't know. You figure that out. But it was really good, too.
I've had this. The Westmalle.
Yeah, the Westmalle.
I had to look up a picture because, of course,
I
was like, oh, it's a visual thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a
good really choice. Good. Yeah, it was really good. I had that. Went to Bruges or Bruges. However they pronounce it, I don't know. I've worked for a Belgian company for a long time, and the only word I know is bedankt. That's all I know. I can tell people thank you, and that's about all I can do.
Well, that's good.
So, it gets you a little ways. You just walk around saying thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
But anyway, great time. Hung out with Belgian colleagues and friends. Got to see some old friends. And one of my old friends met me at my hotel in the morning on his way to work. And he brought I'm going to show you if I can find it.
All right.
Oh, it's out of reach. It's a model of the diecast of the FW 16 with David Coulthard.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. He's awesome. Coon, he's a good guy. So anyway, all right. Should we talk about F1?
David Coulthard, you're also awesome, but
Well, sure. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
yes, sure.
All right.
Seems like a nice chap.
Okay. Here we go. All right, let's jump into some tire talk, shall we? So big news this week. Okay, you guys remember in Monza in Hungary, we tried what they call the alternative tire allocation program, and not to be outdone by the U.S. government, Grace, they do have to make an acronym out of that. So it is the ATA. That's what all the hip kids in the paddock call it. That was tested in Hungary and Monza, and now Pirelli are set to discuss. Now, I thought this was a good move by Mario Isola for Pirelli. That was a good move because he said they're ready to discuss the pros and cons. He's already admitting up front, hey, probably a few cons, but let's talk about them, right? We're going to talk about them. So he said they're ready to talk.
I think in small print, he's like, let's talk about the cons that the FIA makes us do.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That aren't my fault. Yeah.
That aren't my fault. Yeah, that the FIA, that Eddie Everywhere wanted us to do.
Correct.
So they tested it. They're going to talk with the FIA about the pros and cons and the teams as well in order to possibly advance this program for 2024. Now, just to recap for those that haven't, dove into the deep end.
You haven't been following this? What? Oh,
shocking.
Oh my
Who hasn't been following this, Grace? I mean, what kind of Formula One fan are you?
I know, really.
And you call yourself an F1 fan. So basically, in a nutshell, to recap, instead of bringing 13 sets of tires for each team on each race, they would bring 11 sets. And this means that in qualifying, each team has to run the hard compounds for Q1, medium compound for Q2, and soft for Q3. All right. And this reduces the number of tires they have to bring. The idea is that the teams have more, this is Pirelli's idea, they have more choices for harder compounds during the race stints, on those long stints and during the race. And it also means that Pirelli can achieve, get this, their sustainability goals by shipping fewer tires. So once again, this is falling under, remember, I've said this for years, for F1, the FIA or F1 has the club of enforcement. It's a three-sided club of enforcement. So everything that happens gets whacked with the club enforcement. It just depends on what side does the hitting, right?
Right.
So the first one is safety.
That was always Bernie's favorite side of the club.
Always, right.
Are you against safety? Do you want people to die? Why wouldn't you want this?
Right. And the next one of the three of the triumvirate is cost, right?
Right.
And the third one is sustainability. So there you go. Not necessarily in that order, by the way. I'm just playing a part here. So
it's the three-legged stool of the FIA's,
decision matrix. It's part of their
exactly.
It's their decision matrix, right?
That's right.
That's kind of how the systems work. The idea is that the teams, they were saying it had more choices, but here's the thing. So how do the teams and drivers feel about it? Well, it may surprise you to know.
No, it cannot be, Ricky.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz, he actually likes it. And while Max Verstappen thinks that it hurts the teams towards the back. Now, the point here is, and to be honest with you, I kind of agree with Max on this one, is that a Williams, a Haas, a Sauber, Alfa Romeo, whatever, they may want to run soft compounds in Q1 to get the car into Q2, but they can't, right? And with hards, chances are the quicker cars will work better on the hard tires. So the reality is that you've got a Williams on a hard, and you've got a McLaren on a hard or a Mercedes on a hard. They're just going to do better, right? Maybe Williams, if they're resurgent Williams, maybe not a good example. Maybe Haas, right? So let me use that as an example. So, and that doesn't give, say, Haas the opportunity to say, okay, look, we really want to try to get the cars up the grid. Let's throw on a pair of softs on their final run in Q1 and see if we can't get one of the cars in Q2, right?
Right.
So that's always been my concern about it, is when you it's sort of an artificial sort of impact that probably doesn't allow for a lot of flexibility, despite Pirelli saying it does. I don't know that I'm buying it, so I tend to agree with Max on this deal. Also, while Pirelli deny it, I do think it limits practice sessions because they're not going to make as many runs to determine
Right.
how their cars
You know, the
perform
tires.
on each compound for each track. Right.
Right.
And so I think that's also an issue. It also impacts the number of push laps a driver can do in preparation for a qualifying run. But Pirelli says they can tweak the ATA program to accommodate that, right? And the tweaking is they'll just take one set away from the race day sets and throw that back into qualifying. So it's
Like
like
giving you more tires somewhere else.
right. So yeah, right. Magically, you've got more tires, but now you've got less on Sunday. We got more on Saturday. We're tweaking it, and so, yeah, it seems like the Shell and P game are robbing Peter to pay Paul there, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So look, I may have it all wrong though. Don't take my word for it. I may have it all wrong. It may just be my perception of what is or what could happen. But Mario of Pirelli said this quote. Are you ready for a quote?
I love a good quote. I love it when you
Everyone loves
retwist.
Okay, so here we go. Here's the quote. Quote, if there's a requirement to fine tune a little bit, like for example, considering one additional set for FP2 instead of having 7 sets for the race, having only 6 sets instead for the race, that's more than enough, and maybe give the same total number, 1 additional set for FP2. It is possible. To be honest, we were checking the number of laps that they ran in FP1, FP2, and FP3 compared to last year, and it's very similar. Almost the same, considering that we had the red flag in FP2, where probably they would have been running a few more laps more. It was exactly the same. So they need to run those laps to have information, and the tire allocation was not affecting this part of the weekend. And I believe that with the ATA, the qualifying session is a lot more interesting because the drivers have to adapt quickly to different grip levels, and you see they're pushing more and more. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, I could have it wrong. It's an interesting point, and surely Pirelli have done the math here, or as the British would say, maths. Maybe they have. Like all teams in F1, Pirelli does have an agenda too, right? And time will tell. As of now, I don't think I'm a fan of the limiting midfield teams in their qualifying strategy. I think that's, for me, hard to get my head around. But speaking, candidly, I don't know. What do you think of the justification and
All right.
impact?
So first of all, I want to put out there that I think they should just be given however many tires at race 1, and we'll see you at race 27 or whatever. You know what I mean? To me, that's the strategy, right? Like, I'm not going to allocate you week by week. Let's just give it to you in a big chunk, quarterly or something. Like, here's all the tires you have for the next 7 races. Go race them how you want, right? So of course any of this is kind of like, I don't know. So and then I think the other thing is that you're gonna hit me with the sustainability part of the club. I don't buy that either, right? So I mean, I think there are ways to make Formula One more sustainable, more environmentally friendly, whatever. But at some point you're just trying to they need tires. This seems like the biggest control move ever. This has nothing to do with sustainability. Has to be, I mean, you already only have one tire manufacturer, so you give the FIA all the control, right? You give Formula One all the control over the cars. And now you're just going to say, well, you're just going to get 3 sets less every week. And maybe we'll give you some more if that doesn't work for you. Or if that doesn't work for Ferrari, we'll just give you some more or something, right?
Right.
And anything that's gonna, in the meantime, mess up the lower teams. I mean, I think that's always, I guess, I don't worry about necessarily the top 5, right? You worry about the bottom 5 or the middle 5, but the top 5,
exactly.
they'll figure it out. They got that. But if this affects Williams or Haas or Alpha, when that's not good, right? That's
Right.
the last thing you want, and that seems to be where. I also am agreeing with Max Verstappen. Please don't tell him. But that's the effect you don't want, right? You don't want it to end up hurting the back end because they won't be able to recover the same way that the front teams will.
Yeah, I agree, Grace. I think their job's hard enough there at the back,
I just think this is a place that we don't need to be futzing around any more than we already are.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way too. I don't know. I get it. They don't want to bring all the tires, and they could reduce the total tire count they bring for the year. And when you do that math, it's pretty significant amount of tires.
It is a lot of tires.
And I get it.
It's a lot of shipping. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get all that. But I kind of feel like,
Why don't we
well,
just
I haven't read a quote from like Gunther or James Vowles or
Yeah.
um, I'd be very interested to see what the midfield or lower teams think about it, not having those options in qualifying to use the allocation however they want to try to get a car up. You know, if let's say a midfield team, Alpine, McLaren, I don't know, pick one sort of that runs in midfield, but
Oh,
um, if they're in Q2 and they're trying to get that top 10, they may run a soft compound Q2 so they can
right.
get in, I don't know. Most of the teams now are running a lot of softs during qualifying, not just Q3,
They
but
have
I don't
to.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Watch this space. Hey, speaking of Pirelli, also the FIA have not announced who has won that tire supplier tender that they opened. It was down to two. It was between Pirelli and
Mm.
Bridgestone. I've read a
Oh,
lot of things that said, it's just a formality. Pirelli looks set to renew their deal through 2020. What was it?
maybe
2023?
this was a part of a deal breaker for Bridgestone.
Yeah, the
That I
HA
would buy,
program.
right? Like,
Yeah, right,
we want
right.
to provide X number of tires. Okay, how can we make it not that number? We're
Yeah,
going to cut everybody by 3 sets every week.
right.
And now Bridgestone won't do it.
And now
Problem
they're
solved.
out. Yeah.
Problem solved.
There was an interesting article. I think Jonathan Noble at Autosport wrote
Yeah.
it, and I didn't have time to include some of the comments that Jonathan had made in the article. But it was a good article. If you go to our Autosport, look for it. It was talking about most of the articles I saw on this whole tire tender thing was
Right.
it's just formality. Probably is going to be it. But Jonathan kind of unpacked it a little bit with some
Hmm.
information about why that may
Hmm.
not be a foregone conclusion, and it came down to it very well could be maybe Bridgestone's offering a lot more money for track hoardings and everything else. It's hard to know. And in that article, he's sort of exploring the concept of the rumors that if Pirelli won this next tender, then after that period of time was over, that would be it for them. They would be done.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know. So I will say, you and I talk about this in F1. It's stick with the evil, and
all right.
changing a complete tire supplier after Pirelli's been doing this for a long time. They've kind of got this down. That would be it'd be a significant change to go to a different tire manufacturer. They got
Yeah.
to get their sea legs too.
Yeah. And they have to be willing to play the role of a single tire supplier, right?
Right.
And they'd have to be, I mean, like, they'd have to let go of that control, I guess, right? Because
Yeah.
when you have multiple tire manufacturers, you have a little bit more competitive edge, you have more control, but
Hmm.
now it's just you. So now you're going to get the directives that Pirelli has. I mean, this has certainly hurt their brand, right? Like it's almost like, Isola should just be like, "Oh, it's not my fault. Please keep buying my tires." Right? This is not representative of our performance on the street.
Yeah.
Please buy our tires, right? This isn't helping them out necessarily. Um, the tire non-war that they have now in Formula One. So I don't know why Bridgestone wants to get involved. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Other than the amount of eyeballs that are on Formula One now versus what was on it before, but
Yeah.
those are the arguments I was making about when they started going with the high degradation tires, and I was thinking,
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a tire manufacturer, I don't want the world to think that I make crappy
It's
tires that wear out really quick.
It's just like rental cars, right? Like that's always been a reason why a lot of people won't buy American cars, because the only experience they have with new cars is rental cars, and rental cars are always the lowest, worst version of whatever that vehicle is. And so
Yeah.
then people don't want to buy that because they're like, I drove an Altima for a week when I was in Florida. I don't want to drive that. It
Right.
was terrible, right? And so um that becomes what they remember. That becomes, the brand to them, and that affects them. And so it's the same thing, right? Pirelli doesn't need this. This isn't their idea. They really want the eyeballs to then go, some version of like win on Sunday, buy on Monday, right? They want to see their name, and then people buy their tires when they have a choice. And that just hasn't really panned out for them. So
Yeah.
That's why I maybe Bridgestone, much like Michelin, already has enough of an inroad into the tire market that doesn't matter.
Maybe.
That like that's a negligible amount of people they might lose that might go, oh, Bridgestones, I'm not buying those. I mean, Bridgestones are a pretty common tire here, so I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Just like Michelin's, like I think if you have a sports car, you're buying Michelin. So
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not a negligible loss. It is a negligible loss for them.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the whole tire tuner thing's interesting.
It is.
And Michelin has always been very clear. If I was way off the mark on the whole, I was always worried about the brand equity impact
Right.
it might have with Pirelli and making a high degradation tire. And you may say, well, I know, but that's all in context for the sport, and that's what's asked for. And they've done a great job of it. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But Michelin still has no interest in it. They would love to be in Formula One, but they've made it clear that they're not going to do it if there's a HD tire. Their whole goal is to make fantastic racing tires that last and you can lean on hard. And so that's why they're in sports cars and they do very well. Yeah.
It doesn't help them.
No.
Again, I guess that goes back to they don't need the eyeballs. They actually need the development.
Yeah. That could be. Let's see. In other Formula One news, let's talk. You remember last time we had a podcast, we talked about Felipe Massa rewriting history, right?
We did.
We're going to talk about that again. Remember that?
Bernie Eccleston, just.
I don't remember that interview.
I know, right? Just telling his stories, and then I don't remember.
Did I say that? I don't remember.
You'd have to ask Charlie. Oh, what? Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Problems. Great.
Ask Charlie. Let's see. Okay. So all of you remember that legal matter from former Ferrari driver Felipe Massa and the deadline his legal team gave F1 to respond to their demanding letter. Well, that deadline has been extended. Apparently, that was quietly extended. So. First concession. Also, Massa's legal team, now get this, Massa's legal team are looking for support from, are you ready for this? Lewis Hamilton.
Oh.
Huh?
Get in there, Lewis.
What?
I mean, that does make sense. Not in 2008 context, but in 2021 context, that makes sense, right?
Right. Well, that's kind of what they said. They said, quote, he's an important ambassador for the sport and has always defended sporting integrity. He is he's an honorary Brazilian citizen, which he is, and very well liked by Brazilians. So I hope he will support us. We have absolutely nothing against Hamilton, end quote. Pretty heavy-handed comment, reminding him of his Brazilian citizenship, all the love they've given Lewis over the years, how much Brazil loves Lewis.
Right.
And, he's always been all about sporting integrity. He's said it 1,000 times, They've read his social media and they've said, hey, and, Lewis likes to kind of put himself out there as an ambassador for the sport, the unsung heroes. So they're kind of using his social media against him there.
It's very Godfather-like, right? Like,
it is.
Well, I enjoyed that. I just think I'm officially Team Felipe Massa because I so want this to go to Discovery. Like, if this never goes to Discovery, we're going to be robbed of so much, right? Like, this will be all for nothing. Like, don't just take a settlement. This has to go to Discovery because there has to be more here. Because if it was just old man Eccleston just talking off the top of his head or just throwing one of his like entertainment grenades like he likes to do, there wouldn't be a like here to stand on. But there clearly is some more here that we need to see. So go Felipe Massa. We need this in Discovery. I need to know what you know that we don't know yet.
It's a great point, Grace, because ultimately, there's some, I'm not one of them, but there's some who are saying DTS is getting a little long at the tooth and getting a little unoriginal and all that. Formula One needs another shot in the arm and a full-on, full-throated Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard type legal case against Massa and F1. They could televise it. They could make, 18, 15 episodes out of that would be over the top entertainment. And And, in the words of Greg Maffei, the CEO of F1, it wouldn't be a snot gobbling event, whatever that means.
I don't know. Here's the other thing I want out of this. I want, during one of Ted's notebooks, for him to just happen to run across Stefano Domenicali and just be Ted and just annoy him with these questions, because I often talk about how, like, 2023 Domenicali versus 2008 Formula One team or Ferrari team principal Domenicali, and how you must feel about those things if we ask that guy versus this current guy. Well, this is the greatest example of that ever, right? Because
Yeah.
you were the team principal Ferrari during the 2008 season, and I just, like, how do you feel about this? I also want to believe, because it's a good story, that when Eddie Everywhere and Domenicali were served the papers from Massa's people, that it was like what you see on TV, where it was like some sort of like costume character or ridiculous way they got served, or they had to be like tricked into accepting the papers. Or I know it's probably not like that at all, but that's more fun, right? Like, I just, like, how did they get served is much more fun than just like some like paralegal came knocking on his door and said, "Here, this is for you, sir. Have a nice day." Right? Like, that's not good at all. I want some like trickeration in here. I want some good drama. And Ted chasing down Domenicali during one of his notebooks. Like, I just have one question for you.
Just one other thing, man. It was like Columbo,
I was gonna say, or like he does a Christian Horner all the time, right? Like, I want Ted to again be on the verge of being banned by another group of people.
Right.
From, we're just not gonna talk to you anymore. That's what I rely on Ted for, is that like cutting edge, annoying journalism. That's what I want from him.
Yeah.
So he's gotta find Domenicali. It's gotta be great.
They were certainly playing the heartstrings as a Brazilian citizen and asking Lewis to give up one of his titles.
He's not, yeah.
As much as Lewis may be a, quote, ambassador of the sport, he's also not about to help remove a championship. That ain't going to happen.
No, and over Zach Brown's dead body as well.
Yeah, exactly. Also, Ferrari, oddly, are not joining in with their support for Felipe in this. So perhaps... who knows? Maybe we'll see a little less of Felipe in the Ferrari garage during race weekends.
Yeah, because Fred's just playing it like, well, I don't know, kids these days, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I think as time goes on, this is losing steam, but who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
Again, I just wanted to get to Discovery just enough so we can really find out, because he apparently has some like serious lawyers. They're not just like
yeah.
I mean, this is some real business that's been picked up. It's not just like Felipe Massa fever dream. Right. There's some real links to this, and so I just want to know what they know, and I want to hear Bernie Ecclestone have to like do more than just his like, I'm an old man, I don't remember Ronald Reagan routine, right? Like,
I mean, he didn't hire some attorney named Teddy Kender in a strip mall and somewhere outside of Miami.
No, right.
I mean, these are, real lawyers, real law firms sort of thing.
Yeah, they've like, I guess they've had cases with like FIFA. They're well versed in sports law. So I just want to know. I mean, I do, but I do like the Godfather nature of this part of the story. Like,
yeah, it is Lewis. Good. I like it too. Let's see. Oh, okay. So this is an interesting story as well, or at least I found it interesting. Maybe you won't. I'll let you be the judge. So let's talk about back before F1 hit its DTS fueled popularity wave. I was in the paddock on several occasions in the media center and working in the media. And I can tell you when you're in the paddock and garage and everything, it can be really hectic back there. And you'd be surprised about how much gear is moving back and forth, and tires and racks of tires and all this stuff. It gets pretty hectic, and you got a lot of mechanics in between sessions washing wheels out, and they're doing all kinds of stuff, and they're moving gear, and then you've got hospitality and people going back and forth and special corporate guests, and so everything gets pretty hectic back there. And as I sat back and observed a lot of it, so I watched all the F1 journalists kind of apply their skills, and but they were always very sensitive to the machine and the timing of what's going on. And so kudos to the F1 journalists and photogs that do that, because they have that cadence down on a race weekend. But I was over there just covering interesting parts that I wanted to cover, but all also trying to remain out of the way, right? But with the popularity soaring, everyone wants a VIP pass to the paddock, and it's creating a congested nightmare with fans limiting the team's ability to move gear back and forth, and even some fans, Grace, knocking on the driver's door in the hospitality areas. He's getting prepared. This happened to Pierre Gasly. He had fans knocking on his personal room as he's in there prepping for racing, and he was like, "What the heck?" So Pierre had this to say. He's not happy about it. But boy, you got to tread very lightly when you're talking about this, right? I mean, very lightly.
Because you don't want you're like shooting the mouth that feeds you, the hand that feeds you, whatever, right? Like these are your fans, right?
Biting the hand that feeds, yes.
Because sponsorship, more so, right? We always have to keep that in mind. More so than in stick and ball sports, sponsorship matters. Right. So if this is not just like you or me and we spend $1 gazillion and we got VIP passes and we get to sit in their pit box, if it's somebody, and that somebody happens to work for one of your sponsors, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Well, here's how he handled it. This is what he said. He said, quote, "I love fans.
I love them."
Very important first salvo. "I love fans, and I always love to stop by and give some time. But then it's obviously our work environment." And he said this to Autosport.
Right.
He said sometimes it's a bit tricky to get around and make sure that we're on time for the commitments that we've got because it's minute by minute. And it's clearly one of the busiest pit lanes. It's very enjoyable, but sometimes it's even people knocking at the door inside the hospitality. You wonder how they got there. So people need to give the space we need to work properly. I would say there's not as many other sports where fans can get maybe quite as close now to the athletes. And he was talking about, just the access, I guess. But he said, but in a lot of other sports, they just seem more respectful. They need to show that respect more often. It's as simple as that. So I thought this is kind of an interesting comment.
It is, but they're not paying to be respectful.
No,
that's not the bill of goods they were sold, right?
Yeah. That's right.
That's on the team. He should be mad at the team is really what it is. And he can't be.
Yeah. Right. Now you and I have been to many other racing series, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. And to be fair, if you've been to an IndyCar race or an IMSA race and you visited maybe Paul and his team in the paddock, and you and I've been to IndyCar races in the paddock, you know that F1 is much tighter about the teams and driver access.
Right.
And it's a credit to IndyCar and IMSA who have somehow managed that fan access and pit lane or paddock walks and those kind of things that they do to give fan access. And that's a very important part of the fan experience. It's fan access. But on the flip side, I try to be fair to F1 and, they're not used to this kind of unfettered access and perhaps the amount of congestion of the paddock. And this is all new territory. So perhaps they could my humble suggestion is look to the other series and how they manage fan presence, movement, and timing. Because with IMSA and IndyCar, it's not like they have VIP passes for all 3 days anytime they want. And with IndyCar and IMSA, they have certain time. IndyCar has a paddock walk, but it happens for an hour between this time and that time. And that's it. It's not like you're just going to stroll down and ask, Michael Andretti real quick what his strategy is during the race. It's not going to happen. So
that's high on my list of things to do in an IndyCar race.
I bet it is. Yeah,
but you're right. I mean, the Baltimore GP, they put the paddock in the convention center, and so you can always walk around. You can always walk around and see what they're doing, but the drivers aren't there, right? They're busy. Like there's a way of. That's why I say this ultimately falls on the teams because they're trying to have the cake and eat it too, right? They're trying to bring in these VIPs. They're trying to bring in the Elon Musks. They're trying to up their brand. They're trying to get some shine off of those famous people. Yeah. They're also trying to bring in sponsor people, right? That always happens. Yeah. And you can't have your cake and eat it too. That at some point, if you want to be successful and you want Pierre Gasly to be able to do his job, you have to say no, right? Yeah. Like you as the team, and you have those like there's always the media person that's like right there next to every driver with the tape recorder. That's now a phone, because who uses tape recorders? But anyway, with the tape recorder, and that person is in charge of making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be all the time, right? And they have a cadre of other people, and you have to keep that schedule, but you have to be able to tell those people, no, you now is not, the meet and greet was breakfast with Pierre Gasly this morning. Now he's working, and we need to keep you separate from what he's doing, right? Or you can't be like, hey, Toto, what are you doing? Right? Like in the middle of a race, he's working, right?
Yeah.
Like he's busy. It is out of control, and there is not a lot of space in there. And then people like bring their children, and then I'm like, wow, now I'm really nervous, right? Because I would be nervous the whole time. Like, don't look anybody in the eye. Don't touch anything. I would just be so nervous the whole time that I don't want to be the reason that something gets messed up. But I did want to point out, this was I'm already turning into MotoGP. I have a whole segment for that. But if you're ever watching a MotoGP race, Pecco Bagnaия's paddock area, the people are in like the tiniest little box in the corner. It was really funny that I was just like, wow, they really pushed them. Like, you are way over here, you're nowhere near anybody, and you just have like this little tiny window you get to look through. It's not like the ones where we see them like it's like just open air and there's a rope, and that's all this between these people and the people doing their job. Is this like, like one of those ropes like at an amusement park, right?
Like stanchions, with the rope. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that, there has to be, your marketing department has to sit down with your team principal people and come to an agreement, because you're having too many people and they're not going to come if you don't win. So what do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
You can't have your cake and eat it too, or you're going to have to find other ways to get access. I think, it's like it's your tiered donation system or whatever. Like, that's the tote bag level. Not everybody gets tote bags.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree. Let's see what else is in the news. Oh, Flexi-wing clampdown. Oh boy, here we go. It's an interesting article by Jonathan Noor. Oh no, sport. Regarding the FIA's clampdown on Flexi-wing mechanisms that will be in place, folks, from this weekend Singapore Grand Prix onward.
Oh.
How about this?
That's right.
That's quick. The FIA single-seater director, Nicholas Tambazzi,
my favorite.
Yeah, he discovered the length at which teams have gone to make their wings more flexible, which he feels contravenes the FIA regulations. Here's what he had to say. He said,
that's their job.
It is their job. That's basically their job, right?
Okay.
The teams, these are the regulations, and this is how we read them, and this is how we're going to flout them.
And if they have questions, they go, I'm just asking for a friend.
I'm asking for a friend. Is
this too much flex? Right? Like,
is this too much flex, or
what about this?
Or this? Well, how much flex? What are we?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to build a car with a Flexi-wing. I'm just proposing these CAD files and CFD dynamics. And I'm just saying, if we were to build one like that,
it might look like this.
Would it comply? That's all I'm asking. That's a brilliant.
Completely hypothetical.
So it's interesting. He said this. He said, quote, in the F1 regulations, we have many flexibility criteria. There are loads that we apply and a certain deflection is allowed. There are static tests that we do to check. And it's obvious that these tests are never perfect because the direction of the test load you apply is always a bit different from the load that is on the track when it experiences genuine aerodynamic force. So there may be differences, and for this reason, in the regulations, there are some general and conceptual specifications that, in essence, provide mechanisms. For example, one could draw a wing that, when applying the force of the FIA test, is fixed, but when applying any other load to that wing, it can be more flexible. For this reason, we have been clarifying for years that mechanisms are not legal, and we have written several clarifications on what we consider a mechanism. Now, this is interesting.
We've prohibited your mechanisms. How dare you bring mechanisms back
Stop
onto
touching
the
the mechanism. Leave
Leave
my
him
mechanism
alone.
alone.
I told you no more mechanisms.
Yes. That's a nice mechanism. Thank
Yeah,
you.
look at that. No more wire mechanisms. I mean,
That's right.
this could go on forever.
That's right. If you've watched F1 for a while, you'll recall the controversy, or as Paul might say, controversy, over Ferrari's flexi floors. Do you remember those, Grace?
Oh,
Who could forget? And then there was the FIA test load increase to prevent wings from moving under load. There was a tricky way, and I don't remember if it was Red Bull or Mercedes or Ferrari. I don't remember which team it was. It's been a few years ago. But their wings were technically passing the FIA test load
oh, right.
in flexibility, but a little slightly over that load amount, and the wing really started to bend, right?
Yep.
And so then the FIA increased the load amounts to try to prevent that. To a point of no return, or it would make you do a serious cost benefit analysis. So they've been fighting this for years. This has been going on.
Right.
And it's very difficult. In fairness to the FIA, it's very difficult to get on top of. It really is. Having said that, this is where the FIA offers edicts mid-season to try and either correct a contravention of the regulation or sometimes hobble a dominant team. I can recall the J dampers of Renault's right in the middle of the season that was outlawed, and it drastically hobbled that team's performance for the balance of the year.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was not happy about that at all. Just recently, Total Wolff said that the regulations were changed to hobble Mercedes' dominance, and perhaps this is pointed at Red Bull, or so the thinking could be. Who knows? The other side of that, perhaps the FIA legitimately believe Red Bull or others are simply not within the regulatory framework. Maybe they're outside of it, and the spirit of the regulation as well. Either way, it's a continuous battle. And Tabatsi continued. He said this, quote, "If under a carbon surface we have levers that allow a deflection in one direction and not in another, we can consider this a mechanism. Another thing we have said in the past is that it's not acceptable when a component has relative motion against an adjacent element, sliding in a different direction from it. What happened recently, some teams have components adjacent to the other that have a fairly high movement, but do not slide in tandem because these two areas are covered with rubber material. We do not consider this acceptable, and for this reason, we have made a clarification," end quote. Now, the review is done with the teams, and it's going to be interesting to see who screams the loudest about this. I don't know. That may give you an indication who has the more mechanisms on their wings.
Yes,
I don't know. Or if there's any change in the pace this weekend, watch that. If we saw Red Bull dramatically off the pace, well, maybe that's who it was. Or if it's Alfa Romeo is dramatically off the pace, or McLaren or somebody, that could be part of the explanation. I don't know.
Yes. I just like the idea of somebody from the FIA just walking around going, "That's a mechanism. That's a mechanism. That's a mechanism."
Excuse me. Can I see your mechanism?
That's a mechanism.
That's
rubbing up against an adjacent part. That's a mechanism.
Rubbing up adjacent parts is a mechanism.
That's a mechanism. We can't have that.
Cannot have that. It's not appropriate.
I'm going to
not
going to do it.
Not going to do.
Not good enough, damn it. Not good enough.
It is not. So watch this space this weekend. See what happens. I don't know.
I just think there's probably a lot of iPad footage as well. We have a question about mechanism. Slide the tablet across the table. Is that a mechanism?
Is that a mechanism? Yeah.
Because I'm just asking again, point of clarification, but that looks like two parts rubbing up against each other. That doesn't look like it's legal.
Yeah, and to try to make it as basic as I can, if there's a portion of a wing element that they know what the FAA load test is, the amount of load they put on a wing, and they know which direction the wind tunnel or whatever's coming at.
Right.
So if they can create a mechanism that won't let it deform under what a typical FIA test is, but when you're on track and you got a lot of side load and vertical and all that, it allows it to move then, but not under FIA test conditions. That's a brilliant piece of engineering, first of all.
Right.
And second of all, you can see what they're saying about it. So
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. This is the way the game is played. And I enjoy
it is the
every
way the
moment of
game's
it.
played. Yep. I give you double diffuser. Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
I live for this stuff. So we'll see.
All right. It's time for Albon's Cats. Oh, yes. It's a good Albon's Cats. A good one. And it actually, Grace, may have something to do with Albon's Cats.
It does, but we're going to get to the MotoGP portion.
Let's do MotoGP first.
My Albon Cats before we're going to get to actually Alex Albon and his cats. So often on this show, I have been known to tell people Formula One, see, there's this other sport called MotoGP, and they figured that out. So why don't you just go watch some races and watch how they figured it out and just apply that to your sport, right? Here's a scenario where I'm very disappointed in MotoGP and Dorna, which is their FIA, right?
Why?
I know, right? So I don't have the F1 streaming service because I have ESPN streaming service, and so that's how I watch all the content. So but I do have the MotoGP streaming service because I hate having to find the races all the time. And a couple years ago when they were all on
BN
Sport, right? And they were on BN Sport, and I couldn't find them, and somebody was like, "Why don't you just buy the app?" And you're like, "Oh, you're right." So I bought the streaming service, and now they're like on regular television again, and I don't know. I just watch all the extra content. So nonetheless, they used to have this feature across the top that was spoiler free. Well, this is great because I often don't watch the MotoGP races because they're on at too early, and they're often on the same time a Formula One race is on. So we tend to watch the Formula One race live, and then I watch the MotoGP race. And then sometimes somebody will say, "Oh, did you watch the Moto2 race?" I'm like, "No." And so then I can go back and watch it. But it's nice to have it spoiler free because otherwise the thumbnail gives everything away, right?
Right.
And so, so you need the spoiler free that's just a generic MotoGP logo and not the picture of the winner.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I loved, the spoiler freeze, because I could go and watch the race without seeing the picture and seeing who won, right? Yeah.
Right. I've stayed off social media for hours because I don't want to be spoiled. There's a Seinfeld, an old Seinfeld where Jerry's like, "I haven't watched the Yankees game. Please don't tell me who won," right? Like that's how he starts every phone call because he hasn't watched the game yet. That's how I feel. Like I just am trying not to watch anything because I just want to watch the race without being spoiled. So they got rid of that. I don't know why. Whose stupid idea was that? So now I have to like scroll through it, but try to just look at the time because of course the MotoGP race is going to be like 2 hours long because there's the hour pre-show and the hour race, right? So I'm like, don't focus on the images. Just try to look for what's at the longest time, right? And well, so then it turns out they now don't put you can watch it live or you can wait an hour and then they post it. What is this? I don't want to wait an hour.
Why is the waiting an hour?
Right. So I go to watch not this last weekend's race, but the weekend before in Catalunya. And this is before I figured out that I just had to wait. And I'm like, where's the race? I can't find it. And of course, I'm trying not to look at any of the little thumbnails. And they have a condensed version. Well, the condensed version is 12 minutes of an hour race, and it goes up right away. I'm like, fine, I'll just watch the condensed version. Now, I don't know if any of you watched the race in Catalunya. Turn 1, lap 1, there's a big, Bastianini takes out 4 other riders. So 5 riders go skidding across turn 1, and you don't even get a chance to process that. And Banyas does this high side and gets run over by, his leg gets run over. He's fine. He raced this weekend, but he's not fine, but he raced this weekend. His leg gets run over by Brad Binder. And there's I had no time to process. Next thing I know, race is over. Alicia's won, but he's on Vinales' bike and I don't know what's going on, right? I am never watching the condensed version of one of these races again. That was no. I said it was like watching, NFL Red Zone, which is, they just show you when the teams are in red zone. So it's all of the games. So sometimes when you watch, especially the early games, it's a little disorienting because it's like 8 games at one time. Yeah, and they're just switching from games. And so if you missed it, you missed it. There isn't a replay. There's
Right.
no conversation about it. You missed it. You missed it. Right. And so you have to really kind of focus and pay attention, especially when there's 8 games going on. That's what it felt like. It was just like, boom, this happened. Boom, this happened. Oh my God, what happened? What happened? The race is over. 12 minutes. It was terrible. So, Dorna, if you're listening, here's what I have for you. Put back the no spoiler version.
Yes.
I don't know why you got rid of that. And post the live version as soon as possible. Why do you make me wait? What am I paying for?
Why is the live thing? I've got YouTube TV, and you can go on, click something that's in the middle of live that you're late to,
And just
it
roll
says,
it
"Do you
back.
want to start from the beginning or
Yeah.
start live?" And I hit start from the beginning, and I watch from the
Right.
beginning.
I know. I'm just really like, I don't know. You know, I find myself doing like this, like just trying to like block it, like the sun with a sun visor when the sun's like in that weird spot that you can't kind of block out, right? Like I'm just trying to cover up the thumbnails and just look at the timing so I can find out when this race is on. So anyway, that's my rant. It was not enjoyable, and I do not recommend watching a race in a condensed format like that. Maybe you could do it for Formula One. I don't think you could. If it was a good race, I mean, MotoGP has boring races too. But if you have a good race, you cannot watch it in a 12-minute condensed formula.
Yeah.
It was just like, what is going on? I have no idea. I can't even catch my breath. All I know is everybody's making touchdowns. I don't know what's going on.
Right.
What's just
Right.
happening here? So it's a lot. It's a lot to follow. So I'm just gonna wait now and hope they fix it, because that's really annoying. But I did want to give a positive shout out to young rider Danny Pedrosa this weekend at San Marino, placing P4 in both the sprint race and in the race, the actual race. So yeah, it was good. It was a good battle on a KTM all the same. So I was really excited. Like, oh, we need to get that young upstart Danny Pedrosa in one of these races.
The
right?
youngster Danny Pedrosa.
But yeah, he was their wild card. It was just really funny. Like, you know, usually their wild card is like some random rookie or some like hometown guy that they're, you know, trying to get some seat time on. But, you know, KTM's using it for their you know, to improve their bike. And so they've been running Danny Pedrosa. I'm like, I'm all for this. This is great.
Cool.
All right. So then the actual Albon's cats, there's a video that somebody, I saw it, I think first on our Facebook page, or somebody sent it to me on Twitter. I can't remember. Then you sent it to me, and so I've seen it now in several places. But anyway, it's Alex Albon, and he's interviewing he's having a board meeting with 2 of his cats and his dog, right? And I'm gonna pretend like I don't know their names, except that I know that it's Horsey and Momo, but I don't remember the dog. No, Tinky's the horse. I don't remember the dog's name.
I don't remember the dog's name either.
But horse is my favorite. Stan/Horse, because they all have like 7 names. Like his animals are like a Russian novel. They all have like 5 or 6 names. So
right.
But yeah, Stan/Horsey, and he's the best one. And so he teases that he's gonna put out merch. I was like, oh my God, I'm totally buying some Stan/Horsey merch if that comes out. Yeah, I'm first in line for a Momo shirt. That would be great.
Yeah,
I'm in on that. I think this is an untapped. I mean, I love the helmet. Like they could just take the helmet that he made and just put that on a t-shirt. I thought that was so great, you know?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
The Albon's pets are 100% fully their own thing. They're sometimes the reason I go to Instagram. So check it out. And I am all for this merch. This would be great. I'll start wearing it on the show. It'll be fun.
That would be awesome. I love it.
I'm here for that.
Very cool. All right. And then if you are on TikTok, go do a search for Pagani, Gary, Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis had that.
Like the weirdest Wheel of Fortune or something ever.
It is. It's so strange, but so Lewis had that Pagani Zonda that he crashed in Monaco, and then he sold it. And the dude that bought it is in this video, and he crashes it in a tunnel. And there's a guy named Gary and his presumably girlfriend or wife or whatever, and she's pretty over the top during the whole thing. But the comment section of that video is hilarious. So you have to go look at the comments based on that. It's pretty funny. So anyway, oh boy. All right. So how about some no shit headlines? Let's do that.
Do it.
First one up. Sky Sports F1 star involved in scary Goodwood incident after car burst into flames.
Paul did not tell us about this.
No, he didn't tell us about this. But this is kind of embarrassing. So you would think your priceless Ferrari 250 would be in good hands in the hands of Karun Chandhok, Sky Sports broadcaster extraordinaire, who promptly caught the car on fire. So that was
because he
that was
crashed it,
unfortunate.
or
No, he didn't
Revved
crash
it
it.
up?
I don't
Oh.
know what happened that caused the fire. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't Karun's fault, but he was going
I mean,
around the
because
corner.
just saying
caught
that
on fire.
it caught on fire made it sound like he just was like smoking or something and
Yeah.
caught the car on fire, right? Like,
Yeah. That's you can see Karun and they're all dressed up in his tweed. All right, let's get this race going. He's in there driving one-handed with a cigarette, doing ashes in the ashtray.
yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Uh,
All right. Well, I assume he's okay.
yeah, he's fine.
Okay, all right.
I think it melted one of his boots, though, but thankfully he's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course. Next headline, Sergio Perez's options for next F1 team after admission Red Bull career may soon end. Boy, and when you've got
racing boats, I mean,
yeah, I know. Well, and maybe there's some truth to this, because when you've got, Helmut Marko,
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
He's in hot water for making his comment about Sergio Perez and lacking focus, but he's South American, and that's, and it was like, whoa, what?
I just remember when Flip showed me this article, and I was like, that's racist, that's terrible. Why would you say that about a person? Mexico's not in South America. Like, that took a little bit for that geography to click in, that I was just like, what? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because at first I assumed I was wrong, and then I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's not in South America.
No. Well, sometimes if you don't live on this hemisphere, there's North America, Central America, and then South America. So there is Central America, and so you got to kind of figure that out. Mexico is not South America.
You could have just called him Mexican.
Yes, you could have. But it doesn't, even if Sergio was South American, so-called, you'd have a hard time convincing me that Ayrton Senna lacks focus.
I know, right? And that's the thing, too, is there's like, well, let's begin to list just the Brazilians.
Yeah.
That are, let alone any Argentinians that also
like Fangio.
Like, exactly, Yeah. So, I was just like, so that there was like many like light bulb moments that went off in like a six-word statement that I was just like, why would you say that? That's a terrible thing. Mexico's not in South America. What about Senna, right? Like, it was just like there were so many moments.
What about the Rodriguez brothers from Mexico? They were great.
Right. And so which are the only other Mexican drivers I know of. So
that
are in Formula One. But anyway, I just thought that's great. But I mean, we already knew he was an idiot. I guess that wasn't new either. But the Mexicans buy a lot of Sergio Perez merch. Like, Red Bull cannot afford to get rid of him. Like,
no,
not that they should. I mean, I think they shouldn't on his talent. I think he's done very well for the team, and I don't know who you're going to put in there that's going to do as well.
Lando Norris.
I don't think that's going to happen. Oh, don't give me no. Well, Kimi Räikkönen's a rumor. I mean, like,
Sebastian Vettel's a rumor now.
I will say, Sebastian Vettel, every time they do those grid, the grid competition things they do, I think they should have Sebastian Vettel playing at home. I want to see how well he does. And that's the marker for everybody else. Because ever since he was able to go backwards on all the WDCs and like would pause and go, oh, I think that was Fangio, or, oh, I think that was Ascari. Like, get out of here. What are you pausing for? You clearly know the answers. Just do it. Stop trying to make us feel any worse.
It's quite the history nut, Formula One history nut.
So I think they should do all of these and just have Seb play at home in comparison to what all the other drivers do.
I agree.
Because I think he would do great. And I missed that. But I don't think Sergio should go anywhere. I think he's great for their marketing. He's great for the team. But if they do just switch, I think that would be fun too. I don't want Lando to go to Red Bull. I don't think he's going to go to Red Bull, but I do kind of like the poetry of bookending your career at McLaren.
Yeah.
For Perez, right?
Right.
Right.
Maybe they could swap.
Yeah, maybe like wife
Maybe.
swap, driver swap. I don't
Driver
know.
swap, yeah.
So I did kind of like the poetry of him, like, and hopefully leaving on a high note, right? Because his first run with
Yeah.
McLaren was
Well,
disaster.
Bookin, he would have to go back to Sauber Alfa Romeo. That's where he started.
Oh, whatever. We're gonna ignore them. We're just gonna
Yeah.
send him McLaren, whatever.
Yeah. Let's see. Next headline.
right.
Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff leave Martin Brundle disappointed over Max Verstappen dig. Now, you got to get up pretty
Was
early
this
in the
the-
morning to piss off Martin Brundle.
Was this the Wikipedia comment?
Yeah.
Oh, please.
And Lewis's comment about how he's never had really strong teammates.
Oh, that whole thing I love, because then I love that they asked Jensen Button about it, and it's like the like verbal, like, because he's a teammate, so he can't say, oh, Lewis Hamilton's full of crap, because then he's discrediting himself as a great driver. But he
Yeah.
doesn't want to just say, like, it was just great. Like Jensen Button trying to answer that, his feelings on it.
Yeah, JB ended up saying,
great.
I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe, but the reality is I would be a lot more afraid about facing Max than I would Lewis.
Yeah, it was just like this whole, you could just see, like, he kind of put out how he felt about it, and then he had to kind of retract that back again. And
Yeah,
kind of
but I think JB beat Lewis in points that year. Yeah. So,
could be.
let's see. Fans are all
Before you go
Yeah.
back, I just want to say, Sky Sport, figure out what you're doing with the Martin Brundle grid walk and stop all this. Whatever. Every week it's something new. This is just nuts.
Yeah.
Just put in some more fillers. Stop having the grid walk. Just put in some more of your, like, interviews, or like, let's race bikes around the track, or whatever. Like, all the other content you have, just add another one of those content-y segments, and let's just stop it. We had the, like, Martin Brundle's not going to do a grid walk. He's going to talk to the fans. That was a disaster. Martin's not going to do a grid walk. He's going to follow McLaren around. That was a disaster. What? Just stop. This isn't working. Either do the grid walk or don't. Who are you kidding? It's fine.
It's fine.
Don't do it. You don't have to do it.
All right. You heard it there. No good
I'm just
luck.
saying, that's what I'm disappointed about, Martin Brundle. Get it together.
Yeah.
You're
Quote,
professionals.
end quote.
Stop looking like a fool. Look like a professional.
Next up, fans are only just realizing what F1 star Lance Stroll's real
Really?
name is.
That's not true. He's
Yeah.
always Strolovich. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how is it that Lance can race, but Nikita Mazepin can't? They're Russian. Oh,
He's
so there you
Canadian.
go. So yeah, he is Canadian. Lawrence Strolovich. That's it.
His dad's name isn't on the spreadsheet. I mean, like,
Yeah.
not just Russian. He's like Russian on the spreadsheet.
This also looks good in front page of Pravda. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there you go. And finally, the last one. I'm a former F1 star, but I've made the surprising decision to quit the sport and go to university in London.
I thought he went to Harvard.
No, do you know who this is?
Nick DeVries?
Nope.
No. Somebody else? Who?
Nicholas Latifi.
Oh.
Now, is he taking liberties with the I'm a former F1 star?
You're not. Although, I guess.
You're not. You're a Canadian race car driver that didn't make it in F1.
I mean, I guess in some ways there's so few of you, right? Like.
Yeah, I mean, there
claim
for a
to be a
little while, I had
star.
2 Canadians on the grid.
Yeah. But
That's awesome.
nope. I think yeah, you and your chocolate money can go to the University of London. But
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. That's okay.
Oh, let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
First up, Miles asked this. It's a good question.
Okay.
Miles says, if you had to bet on a race for Red Bull to lose outright before the end of the season, which one do you think it would be?
I don't know. What do we have left? I don't have my calendar's on my phone, which I'm using as a camera.
That's a good
I don't-
question.
I'm gonna have to pull up a schedule. I don't like to read the mailbag questions. I like to just give you my honest first reaction, but maybe this one I should have prepared for.
Well, we got Singapore.
Yep.
Then we got Japan.
Nah, not Japan.
Then we got Qatar. Or do we have guitar? Is that right? Or is that MotoGP?
Yeah, that's what it says. No, it says guitar.
Then we got U.S., Mexico,
Vegas. He could lose Vegas. Who cares?
Brazil, Vegas.
It's not going to lose Brazil.
And then Abu Dhabi.
All right, so I have to pick one of these. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most likely would be Vegas just because nobody knows.
Yeah, true.
It's a crapshoot, right? It won't be Japan.
Sure is.
Maybe in more ways than one, but yes, maybe Perez. Oh, it's Red Bull, so Perez may win Mexico, but
I think it could be this weekend.
Oh, at the Felipe Massa Invitational.
Yeah. You know, Max doesn't have a good track record here. And
well, that's true.
And it's a tough circuit, long. It's yeah, this is not an easy race. I guess if I had to bet, I might bet on this weekend. So I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna go with Vegas.
Okay.
Singapore's a good choice too. We'll see.
You like
Vegas, baby, Vegas!
All right. Let's see. Steven Asla says, my wife, shirtless George Russell, and I, Donkey Legs, have really enjoyed being a part of the Parc Fermé Fantasy League over the past few years and seeing how we stack up against other podcast listeners and the hilarious team names some chose.
I love it.
Wanted to point out that our very own Shadow Realm is now ranked #1 in the world after Monza, so huge shout out and congrats.
Oh my gosh. That is great.
That's awesome.
Wow. I'm like, our team is like 210 or something. I don't know. We're not very good.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's I'm not doing well. I'm not in the top 10. But Paul and I are like right there next to each other.
My goal is always just to beat Paul, even if in a technicality.
I know. Yeah, right. Let's see. Finally, Kuhn asks, I'm very happy to see Williams do relatively well this season. James Vowles is doing something right at that team. Do you have any idea what that something is? Or how does company culture impact performance so quickly? Loved your TPF stories on Carl the Orphan. He said, very Nate DeMeo-esque. Podcast, The Memory Place. Oh, I haven't heard that one. Sorry. I'm not familiar with it. But, well, it's a great question. Here's the thing. I think sometimes when you shake up a team like that, and you get a new boss with a new vision. I have to think, Kuhn, that the biggest impact is, and you can kind of hear this, Williams is up their game with a lot of video vignettes from James after the race where he talks about the race, what they were facing. Yeah. And James is very transparent, very open about that.
100%.
Talks about the details. So if you're not watching those, go to Williams's social media channels and look for those videos with James because he does explain quite a bit. Yeah. But I think I don't know James, never met him, but I have the impression that it's in the details. I think James is a details guy, and I think he's probably gone in and taken a pretty exhaustive look at every part of their process. And I think he's starting to fine-tune their process, put the right people into place. Keep in mind, he's got a heck of a lot of wisdom and knowledge about what it takes to be a championship-winning team as he walked in here. So some of those immediate sort of processes, materials, design philosophies, and everything that he knows from his Mercedes days, he could immediately deploy in Williams. And so a lot of those are very detailed. They make lots of little details make big change, right? And so I feel like that's kind of where, but it's a great question, and I'd be curious to know what you think and what other people think about, what they see on the outside looking in, or is listening to James's videos, where they think he's making so much progress, because they really have progressed. Yeah.
I do too. I think the thing is that James is able to be both big picture and detailed, like you said, right? Like usually you get one or the other, right? Yeah. Well, I mock his like inspirational speeches because I think they're hilarious because he's clearly an engineer and not the like.
Right.
Come on. He doesn't do a lot of coach speak, right? Which is why those videos are so useful, is because there's very little coach speak, but he's also not out there ramping up the troops, right? That's not really his strength. But I think that he's able to put his money where his mouth is, right? He's able to say, we need to fix this, and here's how we're going to do it. Not just, we need to fix this, figure it out, right? Like, he knows, I think you're absolutely right. Like, he has experience at all these other teams. He spent a lot of time at Mercedes. He's seen what works and what doesn't work, and is able to just get them organized. I think we've all been in teams or jobs or something like that where somebody comes in and it's just like a light bulb.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you've just been like quagmired into this project or something, and it's like somebody comes in and it's just like a light bulb, whether it's a new employee or somebody from a different division or something like that just has new eyes on this problem, and all of a sudden it's like it clarifies itself, but also they have to be able to do the work. And I think that's what James can do, right? He's not just telling you things. He knows how to do it. So I think that makes a real difference too.
I think you're right, Grace. I think it's maybe to make a short sentence out of it, maybe I'm way off the mark, but I think he's able to view that team both tactically and strategically, at the same time, which are markedly different timelines, right? But that's and that's not easy to do. So I think he's doing a great job. But
and knowing where to be patient and where to push, right?
Yeah, where to push, and not only that, but he's working with both hands tied behind his back on very limited resources, so that's a very difficult challenge as well. So
and they have Alex Albon. I think that also
helps.
It helps a lot.
Big time. I think Alex is terrific. Yeah. Okay, well, that does it for this podcast. What we think about the news. You let us know what you think about the news. You can do that by going to theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion with decorum and civility, as always. No personal attacks. And a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we could not do this podcast and would not do this podcast if it weren't for you. So if you are not a Patreon supporter and you would like to be a Patreon supporter, because unlike the guy that crapped all over my Parc Fermé stories, maybe you like the podcast. And if that's the case, you can go to our website on the right-hand side. In the sidebar, it says support us, or you can go all the way down to the bottom of the page on the left-hand side. And there's a link there for, PayPal donation or Patreon or whatever you want to do. But you can support us there. If you still don't want to support us, find a supporter and pat them on the back, because this podcast exists because of them. So huge thank you to them. And next week, we should be back with the Felipe Massa Invitational from Singapore.
Right.
I need that. Well, I can't play music. I'll get a copyright strike. But that Fire and High music by ELO back in the 70s, they used to play for the ABC Wide World of Sports intros to the golf tournaments.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I need. So anyway, we will be back next week to cover the race. And until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over.